When people talk about the Old West dying, they imagine it fading quietly, the six-shooters falling silent, the outlaw trails growing cold, and the last wanted posters curling on the walls of forgotten rail depots. But the truth is harsher. The Old West didn't fade out. It went out with an explosion in the mountains of Oregon, when three brothers with more ambition than sense turned a simple train stop into one of the deadliest crimes in American history. Before we descend into the chaos of the Siskiyou Massacre, the final great train robbery of the frontier age, tell me this in the comments. Do you think outlaws like the DeAutremont brothers were born violent, or shaped by a world that was already stacked against them? I want to hear your take. And while you're here, make sure you subscribe to Echoing Westwinds so you never miss a journey into the hidden corners of frontier history. The making of three outlaws. The DeAutremont brothers didn't come from a family soaked in crime. They weren't the sons of gunslingers or frontier raiders. They were the sons of a barber. Ray and Roy, identical twins, were born in 1900. Their younger brother Hugh arrived 4 years later. The family drifted between Iowa, Arkansas, and eventually Oregon, where their father cut hair for a living. But the West was changing. The frontier was closing. And young men who once might have ridden for ranches or drifted between cowtowns now worked in brutal logging camps, where wages were low, tempers were high, and the forests felt like cages. By their late teens, the twins had become wanderers. They hopped freight trains, picked fruit, did hard labor jobs, and started sliding into the orbit of radical labor groups. Especially the industrial workers of the world, the IWWB. Ray became deeply involved. And in the climate of the 1919 Red Scare, that made him an enemy of the state. Arrests followed. A year in a Washington reformatory, a year in jail in Vancouver during the government's Bolshevik roundup. By the time he came out, he wasn't an angry young man. He was a hardened one. Hugh, on the other hand, seemed like he was heading toward a normal life. Good student, quarterback on the football team, bright future. But blood ties run deeper than ambition. In 1922, Hugh joined his older brothers at a logging camp near Silverton, Oregon. The pay was rough, the conditions worse, and the brothers, working under fake names, started dreaming of something bigger. Not a buck a day at the sawmill, a score, a big one. Something that would rip them out of obscurity forever. Something like a train robbery, a dying frontier, a new kind of outlaw. By 1923, the classic outlaw era was already long gone. Jesse James was dead. Butch Cassidy was a ghost. And train robbery, once the outlaw's favorite profession, had become almost impossible. Railroads armored their mail cars. Express companies armed their guards. And law enforcement could now cross distances in hours, not weeks. But the DeAutremont brothers didn't understand they were living in a different age. They thought they could do what Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch had done. They thought planning, guts, and a little dynamite could beat the system. They were wrong. The target they chose was train number 13, the famed San Francisco Express, running from Portland to California, straight through the Siskiyou Mountains. It made one vulnerable stop, Tunnel Tredio, a narrow, choking passage carved into the mountainside where trains paused for brake checks before descending toward California. The brothers found an abandoned cabin hidden in the hills above the tunnel. They filled it with food, blankets, guns, and a full case of dynamite. For weeks they practiced, studied the route, timed the stop, planned every second. And as autumn came, they made their move. October 11th, 1923, the Siskiyou Massacre. 12:30 p.m. The San Francisco Express rolled to its stop at Tunnel 13. The helper engine detached and moved aside. Engineer Sidney Bates and fireman Marvin Sang stepped down to inspect the brakes. Before they could finish, two men stepped out of the trees, faces covered, guns drawn. Hugh and Roy forced the crew back aboard at gunpoint and ordered Bates to inch the train through the tunnel to its western mouth, where Ray waited with dynamite. Their target was the mail car, Inside was postal clerk Elvin Dougherty, who sensed something was wrong the moment the train lurched forward. He locked the reinforced mail door and refused to come out. The brothers yelled, threatened, fired warning shots, nothing. So Roy lit the dynamite. Here is where the robbery became a massacre. He didn't use one stick. He didn't use three. He used the entire crate. The explosion tore through the mail car like the blast of a battlefield shell. Metal shredded. Wood splintered. Mailbags vaporized. And Dougherty, the man they wanted to intimidate, not kill, was obliterated instantly. When the smoke cleared, the brothers stared at the wreckage. There was no treasure, no gold, no payroll. Their entire plan, the months of preparation, had been built on a false assumption. And now the valley echoed with a blast heard for miles. The robbery was already over, but the killing had barely begun. A trail of blood. The explosion drew railroad workers from the tunnel and nearby stations. The first to arrive was Brakeman Coyle Johnson. He stepped out of the eastern tunnel mouth holding a lantern. Before he could say a word, the brothers shot him dead. Then they executed Bates and Sang, the engineer and fireman, even as they raised their hands to surrender. The brothers later admitted it openly. "We didn't want witnesses." That single line sealed their fate. From that point forward, they weren't outlaws. They were murderers. And the manhunt that followed would be unlike anything America had ever seen. Exhausted, panicked, and now fully aware they had nothing to steal, the brothers fled into the woods, toward their hidden camp, leaving behind a scene so brutal it shocked even seasoned lawmen. The biggest manhunt in Western history. The Siskiyou Mountains were rugged, endless, and unforgiving. A maze of ravines, ridgelines, and dark forest. The perfect hiding place. But they weren't perfect criminals. Within hours, federal postal inspectors arrived. Local sheriff's departments joined. Then the Oregon National Guard. Then federal agents. Then railroad detectives. Then locals by the hundreds. It was the largest manhunt ever mounted in the Pacific Northwest. They found camps, footprints, burned clothing, canned food, shotgun shells, bullet casings. But no brothers. For nearly 2 weeks, the DeAutremonts lived off their hidden supplies, slipping farther into the backcountry while law enforcement scoured the mountains. Many assumed they'd fled to Mexico. Others thought they died in the woods. They were wrong on both counts. The birth of modern forensics. Just when the trail seemed hopelessly cold, investigators made a choice that changed American policing forever. They hired a scientist, not a sheriff, not a tracker, not a detective. Professor Edward Oscar Heinrich, a chemistry expert from UC Berkeley, a man newspapers would later call the Wizard of Berkeley. Heinrich examined the overalls left behind, fingernail clippings in the pocket, a towel from the cabin, a Colt pistol, a shipping receipt, handwriting samples, hair fibers, soil residue, shotgun shell patterns. Piece by piece, he constructed a profile of the killer so detailed it stunned investigators. Left-handed logger, neat personal habits, medium height, brown hair. Then he found the key, and a registered letter receipt in the overalls addressed to Hugh DeAutremont. Finally, a name. From there, everything snapped into focus. Aliases, letters, witness accounts, abandoned belongings, all pointing to the three brothers. This wasn't just solving a crime. This was the moment American forensic science proved itself. 8 years before the FBI even had a crime lab, Heinrich showed what evidence could do. And it changed law enforcement forever. 4 years gone. But knowing who committed the murders was one thing. Finding them was something else entirely. The brothers vanished. 4 years passed. Tens of thousands of wanted posters circulated in multiple languages. The government offered massive rewards. Sightings came from across the world. All false. The case seemed doomed to fade into legend. Then one random moment cracked it open. A U.S. Army corporal named Thomas Reynolds, stationed at Alcatraz, recognized a face on a wanted poster. Hugh. He had served with him in the Philippines, where Hugh used the fake name James Price. Within hours, Hugh was arrested. And once the youngest brother fell, the dominoes collapsed. 2 months later, Ray and Roy were found living under aliases in Ohio. They surrendered without a fight. A soft ending for a crime drenched in blood. Trial, prison, and a slow end. All 3 brothers were extradited to Oregon. Each faced first-degree murder charges. Each received life in prison. But time treated them differently. Hugh was paroled after more than 30 years. He died of stomach cancer 3 months later. Roy suffered the worst fate. Diagnosed with schizophrenia, subjected to a lobotomy, he lived out the rest of his years mentally broken, shuttled between hospital and nursing home until his death in 1983. Ray outlived them all. Quiet, soft-spoken, trying to reclaim some form of normalcy as a janitor in Eugene. He spent his final years painting, studying languages, and battling the guilt he carried for 6 decades. He died in 1984. Today, all 3 brothers lie buried beside their mother in Salem, Oregon. The true end of the Old West. Historians argue about when the Old West truly ended. Some say the day Billy the Kid died. Some say the day the frontier was declared closed. Some say the day Butch Cassidy vanished into Bolivia. But the Siskiyou Massacre is a different kind of ending. Not romantic, not mythical, not noble. It was ugly, chaotic, stupid, violent. A crime committed by young men chasing an outlaw dream that no longer existed, and undone by a new world where science, not 6-shooters, decided guilt and innocence. This was the moment America stopped hunting outlaws the old way and started catching criminals the modern way. A turning point carved into the mountains by dynamite and blood. Before you go, tell me this in the comments. Do you think the DeAutremont brothers would have succeeded if they'd been born 40 years earlier? Or were they always destined to fail? I want to hear your take. And if you want more deep-cut frontier stories, mysteries, and forgotten legends, make sure you subscribe to Echoing Westwinds, because we're just getting started.